Hey, year 10. Now we're up to 7b, which is actually sketching parabolas. Now, quadratic functions come in a few different forms, but one of them is actually turning point form, and that's what we're going to use to sketch parabolas to start with. Now, turning point form looks a little bit like this. So you'll see that I've put lots of different letters in here, A, H, and K. That might seem a little bit confusing, but what I've got written underneath is what they actually do. So H controls horizontal translation, so that means whether it's moving left or right. K controls whether it's moving up or down. But the main thing you need to really look at is if you put HK in brackets like this as a coordinate, it shows you where the turning point is. Okay, so that's going to be key to what we're doing soon. A, which is at the front, it controls dilation from the x-axis, so it stretches it away from the x-axis. And if A is negative, it's going to reflect it in the x-axis, which we saw when I was experimenting with the CAS the other day. Now, if you feel a little bit confused with what I've said just then, honestly, don't even worry about it. We really just need to tick off a few things to sketch graphs. It can be a lot easier than what this sort of stuff makes it seem. Okay, so let's go down and actually try to sketch our first one here. All right, so I want to do these four things. I want to find the turning point. I want to see if there's been any reflections. Then I want to find the x-intercept and y-intercept. And I'll show you how to do all those things. Okay, so sketch the following, showing the coordinates of all the key points. All right, now the first thing I want to do is find the turning point. So I'm going to label what I'm doing over here. I'll do all my working out on the left side and I'll sketch on the right side. So I'm finding the turning point. Now, the turning point is found using these two numbers here. Okay, so I can already tell what it is just by looking at this rule here. Now, H and K, remember it said, I'm going to show you up here, it said minus H, but the turning point was just H. So we're going to take whatever value's in here, but then change the sign. And then K is just going to be the same. Okay, so with this one here, it says -1 in there, but the x value of the turning point is actually just 1. And this -4 here, that's our y coordinate. So I've found out where the turning point is just by looking at this function because it's in turning point form. Awesome. So we're done with finding the turning point. The next thing we need to do is check for reflections. Now, if there was a negative out the front, that means it's going to flip it upside down. There's no negative, so the shape that we're going to have is going to be like that. It's going to be a smiley face rather than a sad face, like that. Okay, the next thing we need to do is find the x-intercept. Okay, so I'm finding x-intercept. I'm labeling what I'm doing so you can see, but you don't necessarily have to do all this, but it might be helpful for you just when you're beginning. So to find the x-intercept, we make y equals 0. All right, so we've got our rule here. Let's make y equals 0. All we need to do is solve for x. So I'm going to move that 4 to the other side. So to get rid of -4, we have to add 4. I want to get to this x, so I have to get rid of this whole squared thing. So I'm going to square root both sides because square root's the opposite to squared. Whenever I square root, though, I get a positive and a negative answer. Okay, so over this side, we've got square root of 4, which is 2. So over this side, we've got a positive and a -2, and that equals x minus 1. We want x by itself, so we need to move that 1 over. So that gives us plus or minus 2 plus 1 equals x. Let's break this up into two different sums, which we should really have. So we've got plus 2 plus 1 equals x, which means x equals 3. But we also have -2 plus 1 equals x. So x equals -1. And there are our x-intercepts. The next thing we need to do is find our, let's go back up here, find our y-intercept. All right, so we find our y-intercept by making x equals 0. Okay, now here's our rule. We just need to make x equals 0. So y equals 0 minus 1 squared minus 4. Okay, minus 1 squared is 1, then minus 4. So our y-intercept looks like it's minus 3. Now, I'm going to show coordinates for all these specific points that we want. So the y-intercept, that's where your x value is 0 and your y value is 3. Your x-intercepts are when your x value is 3 and your y value is 0. And the other one is where x is minus 1 and y is 0. So let's start sketching this graph now. So all I'm going to do is show all of these key points. I need to label my axis though, so that's a y-axis and that's the x-axis. Alright. Now the turning point was at 1 and minus 4. So let's just say 1 and minus 4 can be down here. And I'm going to show my coordinate, 1 and minus 4. There we go. Now the next things I'll show are my x-intercepts. So one is at 3 and the other one's at negative 1. So if that's 1, 3 must be about here. So I'll say that's 3 and 0, and negative 1 must be about here. Negative 1 and 0. And I need to show my y-intercept, which is at minus 3. Minus 3 will be about here. And the shape, because it's not reflected, should be like that. So what we're really doing here is just following the dots. Oops, I should have gone through that point. There we go. So that's what our parabola looks like that has that rule just there. I might show you one more example, one that maybe is slightly different. It should be B. Okay. So with this one here, it doesn't really look like it's in turning point form too much. You can change it so it's in turning point form, but I just want to look at what's going on here. So when we were experimenting on the CAS, you might remember that if we added something to the end or took it away, it moved it up or down. So if we have our normal x squared parabola, so if I cover that and cover that, but then I take 4 away, it's going to move it down 4 units. So the turning point's going to move down 4 spots. Now, if I then decide to put that 4 at the front there, hopefully remember what that does, but it dilates the graph and it makes it skinnier. So instead of me working out the turning point and all that through what I showed you just before, I can really quickly do this one. So instead of our graph looking like that with a turning point there, it's been moved down 4 units. So it will look something like that. It's been made a bit skinnier too. So instead of having a turning point at 0, 0, the turning point's here, which is at x is 0 and y is minus 4. But the other things we need to show are our x-intercept and our y-intercept. We've already got our y-intercept. The whole thing's been moved down and the y-intercept is there. We just need our 2 x-intercepts. And the way we do that is by making y equals 0. Okay, so let me do that just here. Make y equals 0. Let's move this 4 over. We want to get rid of this 4, so we divide by 4. We divide by 4 here, that gives us 1. There we go. Now we want to get rid of this squared, so we need to square root. So plus and minus the square root of 1 equals x. So x equals 1 and x equals minus 1. So there's our 2, oops, sorry, I wasn't filming it. There's our 2 x-intercepts. So x is 1, y is 0. X is minus 1 and y is 0. So we can put those 2 in here. This one must be the positive one. This one must be the negative one. There we go. So we've sketched our graph. We're done. If you wanted to look at this in turning point form, what you could actually do is, in turning point form, it looks like there's brackets, isn't there? So with this here, I could actually just chuck brackets in. And it's normally x plus something in there, isn't it? So that looks more like turning point form. I haven't really changed a whole heap, have I? I've just put brackets around that x, which really doesn't do anything. Now, there's not supposed to be anything with the x, is there? So I could say plus 0. You see how this looks more like turning point form? So what you could sort of see by this is say, all right, the turning point has an x value of 0 and a y value of minus 4. Do you see how that's what we had over here anyway? So you can kind of change one that looks like this to that to perhaps more easily find the turning point. It depends. Some people find this one easier, some people find this one easier. Whatever works for you. If you have a go at the questions, if you have any troubles, which I think you probably will at this stage because a lot of people find this sort of thing a bit difficult, let me know and I'll help you. Definitely don't hold any questions back about this stuff because this is really important.